Welcome to the Divine Feminine Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Celeste Hartwell, and we are a feminine view of entrepreneurship for women, by women. Unofficially, we interview women who are making a shit ton of money and breaking all the rules. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Divine Feminine Leaders podcast. I am your host, Celeste Hartwell, and I am so excited about today's episode and welcoming you into this space. If you have never watched this before and you are showing up live, whether on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, we would love to hear about it in the comment section and love to invite you into this conversation. If you're on the replay or following this on any of the podcasting platforms that we are live on, then we would love to have a conversation. You can go over to YouTube, find Divine Feminine Leaders, and join in the conversation there. So today's episode is really special because I met this woman a couple months ago and we just completely hit it off. And I thought, what an amazing woman to have on the show. And you're going to see why today this is even more important than having it any other day of the year. So this week we're interviewing Rosie Aiello, sorry, I said it wrong again, Aiello. And after a 25-year relationship, Rosie engineered an international escape from the Middle East to save her young adult daughter and herself from domestic violence. Stunned by PTSD and nearly mentally destroyed, she reinvented herself since arriving back in the United States and became a speaker, best-selling author, podcast host of Vulnerable to Valuable, and an international multi-award winning entrepreneur. With her Freedom Fulfillment Pillars system, Rosie helps women who have emerged from narcissistic, controlling, and abusive or toxic relationships to reclaim their voice, value, confidence, and courage so they can create a joyful, productive, and prosperous life that they desire. She also coaches women to find the kind love of their life, just like Rosie has. She is on a global movement to inspire and impact 100 million women and their children to release the shackles of abuse and guide them to believe that they deserve to be treated with kindness, which is a foundation for their empowerment. She co-founded National Love is Kind Day, which is tomorrow, July 27th, to celebrate that real love is kind, not abusive, it's not cruel, it's caring, it's not threatening, it's safe. And to help continue the mission that by creating kinder relationships, we create kinder families, communities, and world. It is a win-win-win. Rosie is a frequent guest on live stages, podcasts, and radio shows. She holds certifications in neurolinguistics programming, life coaching, executive coaching, and timeline dynamics, as well as holding an MBA in finance. She enjoys biking, boogie boarding, stand-up paddleboarding, dancing, cooking, baking Christmas cookies, and building gingerbread creations for Christmas. And she got her first wetsuit at 65 and now loves to boogie board. And she loves to hug, virtual or otherwise. So if you see her anywhere, please give Rosie a hug. So with that, I just want to say I really wanted to have Rosie on today because she is so inspirational. Like I said, this was such perfect timing to have her on the show. And Rosie, welcome. I am so honored to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited. I got goosebumps as you were reading my story. I was like, I'm excited.
I love it. So, oh my goodness, tell me about your journey and how you got to where you are now, because I know that it's like, it's almost one of those things that once you've like made it as far as you have, it's easy to be like, well, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it is a big deal. You brought your daughter out of, and you yourself made an international escape and really shifted your life in a huge way. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's always, no matter how many times I hear somebody read my bio, I always kind of get taken aback by, oh my God, I did this. It really is huge, and I don't take it for granted, and I don't take my freedom for granted either. It's just that I was married. We were in a relationship for 25 years. I was married 18 years, Celeste, before I even knew I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't even know. I didn't have the vocabulary. I was living overseas, and even back then, it just wasn't well known. But I just knew something felt off. And so when my daughter came to me and she said, "You got to get me away from my abusive father," within 4 months, I planned the escape of our lives. And I knew nothing about personal development. I knew nothing about mantras, but I told myself, my daughter and I deserve a happy and joyful life. I don't have to be a martyr. I have one life to live, and I'm going to live it. So it was with that feeling that I just like, this is going to work. There was no plan B. It was plan A. The escape was going to work. And I can tell you the story about the escape, but we had planned it. I planned it with my brother because my brain was almost fried. And we landed in San Francisco International Airport. I knew exactly where my brother was going to be. My daughter and I pushed our carts behind him. I was so afraid of my husband. I had my brother come talk to him and say, "She needs some time away from you." I couldn't even have my brother say, "She's leaving you forever." I mean, I was so terrified. I couldn't even have my brother do it. So my brother told him, and then my brother came back. My daughter and I, my brother, we turned our backs and walked out of the airport, leaving him standing alone, completely stunned at what had just happened.
Wow. Wow. That is so powerful. And I didn't even know that part of the story about how your brother helped you and you didn't even have the courage to have your brother say, "I'm leaving you forever," right? Like it was just like, this is just going to be a short time. Like that is so incredible.
Yeah, I was very, very much in fear. And that's what happens to these women. We just live in constant fear. And that's why, and then so I get here, back in the United States. It's like, okay, now what, right? I had to know now what. I had landed when in the middle of the Great Recession. I was old. I mean, I had been out of corporate finance for 25 years, right? So I had to recreate everything. And I guess I just have the attitude of looking forward, moving forward. I've got to create my life. I have one life to live. Remember, that was what I kept saying every day to keep going. And I want to live this life. And I think the other thing too, Celeste, that was really different for me is as I was thinking about this, it's like I could have stayed in the marriage and I don't know if I would have survived truly, but I could have stayed there and tried to please him and fight and be miserable creating that life. Or I could work hard and not always be happy. It's a hard journey, right? But I'm creating my life. It's my life, working for my life. And what a difference that is. That to me is the key, that your life is worth fighting for. Your life matters. Your life is important. You are enough. And I had to go through so many things, and still, it's a journey.
And it is. And I want to back up a little bit because I heard you say something really important that I think that a lot of us, we're taught that if we don't know exactly what we want to do by a certain age, then we're too old and we're never going to get there, right? So tell me how old you were when you came to the United States after this extremely abusive relationship, having, I mean, let's just say it, like virtually zero self-esteem, no confidence in yourself, and kind of just taking this leap of faith. Like, how old were you when you started this journey?
55.
Wow.
I was 55 years old, and I had Um, I mean, I was a shell. I looked great on the outside, right? We looked great on the outside, but there was literally nothing inside. I had no belief in myself. I didn't even, I had PTSD, but I didn't know I had PTSD. My daughter has complex PTSD, all these things. So I was dealing with my trauma, her trauma. We were re-traumatizing each other and trying to figure it out. And I think that was I just kept trying to figure it out. So when I started to rebuild myself, I went to this workshop and that workshop. And I discovered that this is going to be almost too funny, but I remember I was in the middle of the Great Recession. It was like, I'm writing my resume. It's like, what do I write? I mean, I did a lot of things, but they say, oh, you speak all these languages and you can work for Chevron and in this country. I go, yeah, what do I just walk up to them? So I swear this is the absolute truth. I decided because I became an entrepreneur because I couldn't write my resume. I mean, it's like, of course, I had no clue that building a business was not a piece of cake either. That was the truth. So I just didn't know what to do. It was like, I can't. It was hard to convey all my skills, into a resume.
So I think that's hysterical. And thank you for your vulnerability with that. Like, you thought that it was easier to become an entrepreneur than to write a resume and get another job. I think is like the best thing ever, because as you know now, as I know now, that's like the furthest from the truth. Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So how did you start I mean, now we know how you started your entrepreneurial journey, but what did you start doing in the beginning once you decided to do that?
Well, I went to these workshops and they said, first I thought, well, I'll be a writer because I really like to write. But I thought, then as I did more of that, still searching, I thought, well, I'm not going to make money at that. So that's not going to work out. So it's like, I went to these workshops. It's like, well, what are you good at? Well, I'm really good at planning. So when I was in corporate, I did strategic planning, budgeting, forecasting, that kind of stuff, but from a financial point of view. But I did the whole corporation. And I planned, by the way, not one, but 3 escapes. That escape was my 3rd escape. And each one was scarier than the one before. The other 2 escapes were from wars, because I lived in a lot of political wars. So we had to escape. But this one was by far the scariest. Forget about the bombs dropping. I had enough in my house. So I realized I had this skill. And so then I became a productivity consultant. I did productivity and organizing and helped businesses become more profitable by managing their time and their systems a lot better. But then there was a switch. I started to get a pull, and it was really interesting. People had been telling us from the get-go, oh my God, your story should be a book. It should be a movie. I mean, we heard that just hundreds and hundreds of times. And I attended a writing workshop, and then I said, okay, I made a commitment that 6 months from that workshop, I would start writing the memoir. It was going to be a memoir with my daughter, which I did. I did do that. There was just this huge shift. And it was coming from outside of me, and or inside, I don't know, you know what I mean? I just got this pull, and as soon as I started writing, I got all these downloads, and I got this, all of a sudden, I just hated my time management and the productivity consulting. It's like I couldn't get away from it fast enough. It was weird. But I also have to tell you, when I was in the beginning of the writing, I was taking a break from writing. I was looking out my window and looking at the palm trees. And then I get this loud voice in my head. Why are you arguing with me? And I go, well, what do you, who am I? He goes, I chose you to help these women. I go, but I don't know what I'm doing. And he goes, are you arguing with me? And I go, well, kind of, sort of. Does everybody argue with God, or is it just me?
Right, right. Oh, I have, yeah.
You guys get that a lot. And I just like, and he goes, and I've heard this over and over all the time, every single download. Rosie, just trust me, surrender, just keep doing this. This is what I've chosen you to do. But I was scared. I'm not joking. You know, it was just like, I kept saying, who am I? And I dug in my heels for over a year. And, you know, he's got a little bit more power, it seems. I don't know. It's just like, so now I'm 100% in. No one can stop me. It's like, you know, like nobody can stop me. And I just am on this mission to help women not have to live this life, not and if they've been through it like I have, to short circuit it so they can really live their life, that person that they were with, who they thought defined who they are, is not the truth of who they are, and that they deserve to be treated with kindness.
I love that. And I really want to focus on that for a moment, because I myself, I don't remember if we talked about this in our conversation when we first started talking about doing this show together, but in my life, I've also had extremely mentally and emotionally abusive relationships. And it is easy when we're in that situation with someone that we love and we respect. On some level, we chose them because we respect them and we love them. And to hear that trusted person call us horrible names and tell us what a piece of shit we are, and whatever however that abuse comes through, right? Like for me, it was awful, and it was, who do you think you are? Like that was coming externally, right? Like, you don't get to do this, and you're so materialistic, and this and that and the other, right? And so when you hear those types of things so often, it is easy to internalize that as the truth of who we are. And I love like that you've had these conversations with God or higher power, however people see that, like where it's like spirit is like, no, I chose you. This is what I desire from you. And I just want to like bring that back to the audience really quickly. Like, you may not hear the voice of God or spirit or the universe, but every one of us has some type of nudge in our heart of, I'm here for more. What else am I here for? What is that? What really lights me up, right? And so it's just, I think it's unpeeling the layers, which it sounds like that's what you actually help women do now, to be able to step into their greatness. So I'm sorry, I just really wanted to like break that down for people. And I want to hear a little bit more now, like tell us a couple stories of where some of your clients have been and where they have gone and what they're doing now, so that we can, you know what I mean? Like, I think we all love like hearing the underdog story and all of that. So.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So I'll just say this one woman, a lot of the women, they want to have a relationship, but they're afraid. It's that push and pull. I really, and so I worked with her, and in the beginning, and I had the same thought. So I got it, so in the beginning is like, when I first landed, all men are bad. I put them all in one bucket. They're all bad. They're going to control me. And they're going to hurt me. Everybody except my brother. And my relatives. But I mean, and it was a core belief. I was so terrified. And well, she did too. She had that same belief. And she said, and I hear this over and over. This is a really common thing women say. And she said, there are no good men in the city, in my city. None, like zero, right? And so for her to shift from that core belief she had, because if she believes that, is she ever going to get the relationship she wants? Of course not, right? That's the problem. So we worked on that. I mean, this is just one aspect of it. And she said, when we were finished working, she said, you have no idea how huge that was for me. just to be able to open up and to believe. Because once she has, we've shifted that belief, then she can trust herself. Right? It's part of that trust. I mean, it was, and she had been in other relationship, I think 4 or 5 years now. I can't remember, something like that. And they're all afraid. They want a relationship, but they're afraid. And it was huge.
What's really coming up for me is that your work is really about taking people from this fear space in relationship, specifically with men, typically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into a space of like love and exception, and like, and not exception of like, I'm just going to accept whatever comes to me, but like, I get to deserve more than what I'm allowing right now. I get to live in a space of like, I don't know the possibilities of relationship, but I trust that I'm going to be okay no matter what happens.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. It's just like, I want to be an example of what's possible. I'm an example of what's possible, to give them that hope that it's possible. Because right now they don't think it's possible. Because I was there. I didn't think it was possible either. It was not in my radar. And you have to be ready. And so there's different stages where they go through. It just depends where they are. I meet them where they're at. And once they have that, it's possible for me. And when I tell women, Celeste, when I tell them, I look in their eyes and I say, you deserve to be treated with kindness, it's like this big, really? I do? I mean, what is that telling you? Right? What is that really telling you when they can't even believe that they deserve it? Because they've been browbeaten, because they've been whatever assault has happened to them, verbally or physically or sexually, whatever it is. And it's just blows my mind.
No, I know. I understand. I mean, I know you've been there. I've been there in different circumstances. And it is so easy, like I said before, to take what somebody is saying externally and then create that and take it as an internal dialogue, right? Like, especially when it's someone that we're in an intimate relationship with. And maybe we grew up and didn't have a healthy relationship to watch and to learn from, right? And to me, that's often where it starts, right? Like when we're not taught how to have a relationship, in front of us, then how do we ever know how to have a relationship with ourselves or a healthy relationship with somebody else?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's why one of the elements when I'm working with them is I tell them, these are the characteristics of a healthy relationship. These are characteristics of an unhealthy relationship. Even if they've been in one, sometimes they don't know it. They just, you don't, if you don't have anybody to challenge your reality, which is like what I had, and most abusers, they isolate you. Right? They make it really difficult for you to get that outside validation or to ask. They're very much in that control. So it makes your world smaller and smaller. Oh, speaking of that, this is another case. I just, as I was talking about that, this is a friend of mine. And this woman is so dynamic. I mean, she talks, she's a networker. She's a big speaker. She's on stages and everything. She met this guy. Long distance. Within 2 weeks, he flew out to her. She sold everything she had. She drove across the country to be with him. And he said, oh, you are so fabulous. I want you to be part of my company and I want you to do this. And so and I could see her because we were constantly in communication. And we started seeing our guy at the same time, actually. And I started seeing her evaporate, just disappear. I mean, just intellectually, and she was traveling with him to his places. And I go, well, are you speaking? Well, no, I'm going to be doing more of his work. It was just such a shock. Again, it doesn't matter. This is the point I want to make, a couple points here. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are, because a lot of women go, how could I have been so stupid? Forget that thinking. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with your intelligence or your education or how much money you make or what job you have. It has nothing to do with it. It's just the dynamic. I'm just going to put it in a simple term. It's just the dynamic. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken either, right?
Mm-mm.
But he just sucked her in. We call that the trauma bonding. He just sucked her in, and she had no privacy. He didn't like her when she was with her clients, especially if it was a man. He challenged her on her loyalty. He got physically abusive with her. She tried to leave, and we were on the call. She's in her car, and I was trying to advise her. She did go back to him, but then again, the second time, where I'm on the call with her, and just giving her more confidence in who she was, and we did a coaching, and she's now back to her old self. Right? You lose yourself. You turn it. You try to think that if I can please this guy, then it'll be all okay. If you ever feel that way, that's a huge, huge red flag.
It's a huge red flag. And when we ask ourselves, or when we berate ourselves of, if I only would have done this or said this, then he would have been okay. Then I would not be in trouble. Then this, that, right? Like that is such a clear, but we're not taught that that's a sign of abuse. Like that is such a deep sign of emotional and mental and spiritual abuse in some way, right? Like, but when you're with, and it's hard when you've only had abusive relationships, then like if you're in a really great, healthy relationship, it can also be like, but I don't deserve this, right?
That's
like I don't,
and you
because I did that as well.
Yeah. And you sabotage it. Yeah. And so that's what I work with them while they're starting to date. It's like, yeah, don't you leave. And I did the same thing with my guy. I had my dukes up. I was just like, no one's going to tell me one thing that I don't like. I mean, God bless the man. But he knew he was really great at creating a safe environment for me. Right? He created a safe environment for me. I felt safe with him. And every time I would do something weird, he was always there. Let me tell you a story. This is really funny, but it's the truth. So one time I was going to the grocery store, and I called him up and I said, do you need anything, since I'm going to be there, because we're going to have lunch together. I was going to go to his place. And he said, well, no. Well, he goes, well, some bananas. Oh, well, then maybe some fruit. I go, oh, okay, sure, no problem. So I get the bananas because that's easy. And then I stood in front of the fruit section, I kid you not, for 10 to 15 minutes, frozen. I was frozen in fear. And the reason I was frozen in fear is that every single time I shopped and I bought a bag of apples, and there was one bad apple, literally it was an apple, one bad apple, my husband would scream at me and tell me I don't know how to shop and never to buy apples again. And and I got that all the time. And I was so terrified to buy fruit, even though I hadn't been with my husband or whatever. That kept coming back. So I didn't buy any fruit. I just bought the bananas. And the whole way home, I'm all upset. I go, I got to calm myself down. That was really lasting. So we had lunch, and then at the end, this is another strategy. I told him what I was going through, and he looked, and I said, I was scared to buy the fruit because I thought, you'd get upset if I picked out the wrong fruit. And he looked at me in this really weird look, like, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody get upset at you for doing that? And when he reacted that way, it was another step of me feeling safe, right? So as you go into these relationships, this is going to happen. Right. But the key is that you have to be your true, authentic self and share that with them. Because if you start to pull back, they're going to think something's wrong, and you're going to think something's wrong. It's going to sabotage. And
I love that you said that, because communication is so important when we're reprogramming ourselves out of the abuse cycle and into like having a healthier relationship cycle, right? Like just saying like, wow, I really had a reaction when you said this, when this happened, when this, whatever. And then like sharing that vulnerably, not only like allows them to show you who they really are, right? Like, because they're going to say like, that wouldn't have been a big deal to me. It happens. Sometimes there's a bad apple in the bunch. It's not a big deal. Or they would have responded and you would have had your answer right there, right? Like, oh, well, that's not what I desire. That's not a healthy response. That's, not the relationship that I want to be in. And it gives you so much information, but it also, for the right people, brings you so much deeper connected, right? Like there's such a deeper connection, because then he's like, oh, wow. He could say, thank you for sharing that with me. Like, I didn't even consider that could be a response, right? And now he's going to feel so much more bonded to you in a healthy, loving, positive way, instead of having what you'd had in the past.
So true, Celeste. And that's why when I work with the women, this is really important. Every time you people please, every time you give in to something, and your body, you know from the inside, you're actually giving up a part of who you are. That's why after years or whatever, 25 years, a quarter of a century of my life in an abusive relationship, ridiculous, right? I lost who I was. That's how you lose yourself. You don't know who you are. And so to get back to that true authentic self, you've got to rise up, and it's scary. It was scary to make that statement to him.
Right.
It's like, who am I if I can't be my true self? I am not going to hide my true self anymore. Enough of that. That's not living. And it's, you know what? It's exhausting not to be yourself.
Well, it's so exhausting, because there's always this sense of walking on eggshells. And if I say the wrong thing, then I'm going to get in trouble. Or if I say the wrong thing, something's going to happen. And I brought that on myself because I should have known better, right? Like, there's that self-beratement that happens in those types of situations. I mean, clearly I've experienced this multiple times. Yeah. I've been there, so I understand. And now I think, similar to you, I'm in a relationship with a man who respects my privacy and it never questions my intentions. No. Or if he has a reaction, he says, I'm really feeling a reaction to what you just shared, or what I just learned, or this or that. And we talk it out, right? Because he was in some not great relationships in the past as well, right? So we both kind of came in with our own things, and we've been working through it in our own ways separately, right? And so, but other than that, like, it's super healthy, other than we're still a little bit of residual, you didn't respond the way I am used to someone responding. Yeah.
Right. And I think, one of the keys, not the only key, but for sure, one of the keys to the success of my relationship, and I think I'm going to say probably yours too, is because you kind of said it, is like, we figure it out. There's nothing that we can't figure out together. We have never had, I would have to say, we've never had an argument, but we have disagreements, but we always have the attitude, we're just going to figure this out together. Or it's just like, it's just there. It's not like we make a decision. It's just like we have the attitude and behavior. When something happens, we just figure it out.
Well, and I want to clarify that, because I think that goes down to a core belief of, we are on the same team.
Yes. And you know what? My ex-husband always told me, you're not a team member. You're not a team member. You're not a team member. And it's like, I never heard of that in a relationship before. No one ever said that to me before. And with my current guy, it's like, we're such a great team. And we always, and now I say that in a positive, we're such a great team.
Well, and I also just want to flag for anyone who's listening who may feel like they're in this type of relationship with a spouse, a boss, a friend, a family member, etc. Normally, when the people are making accusations in those ways, it's because it's actually a mirror of what's going on with them, right? Like, my first husband would always be like, oh, you're cheating on me, you're cheating on me, you're cheating on me. I'm like, I never have looked at anyone else, but then come to find out that he was constantly cheating, right? And I realized, like, wow, if somebody's really making that vehement of an accusation against me, it actually has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with their paranoia because of how they're actually responding in the situation.
Yes, and it's important. At the time, women, we're not used to responding right away. We can't. It's hard to have a comeback, or even know if we should have a comeback. There's all that strategy too.
Well, there's the question of safety.
Right, always safety first. I always tell them, depending where they are. I work with women who are already out. I don't work with women who are in. They need other care and support. I mean, I could, but that's not my focus. But when we're still in it, or whatever, in case they are, it's just like, just to kind of remind yourself, this is not about me. It's really hard when you're getting blasted, day after day. It's not about me. Well, you must be right, because it sounds so logical. And the other thing women do is like, well, I'm not perfect either, right? That's another red flag, because they'll make sure you're not perfect. But if you have that thought, you're making an excuse for the behavior. Yep. Big red flag. Big red flag.
Huge red flag.
Yeah. So, my goal is to help women move forward, to get that, to reclaim their voice, right? We all lost our voice. We didn't know what, literally, can't speak. And to get that confidence back, that I know who I am, their value, what they're worth, their courage to really step out and be who they are. I mean, you have this one life. It's just like, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat this and say, oh, it's just happy-go-lucky. When you're going through transformation, it's uncomfortable. I used to say, like the rock polishers, the rock tumblers. You go on the machine and it turns and turns and it's smooth. I felt like, okay, pop out. Yeah, you're not smooth yet. Get back in there. And it's like, oh my gosh. But how you feel and how you end up feeling, again, it's a journey. It's all the time. It's almost indescribable. I gotta say, it's almost indescribable, because you cannot imagine how your life will be, because so many, we base our future on our past. We based our present on our past. I could never tell you, when I landed, tomorrow it will be 12 years is our anniversary. The 27th is the date we landed in the United States, and that's why we chose it as the date for the National Love is Kind Day. I could have never in a million years have predicted my life now. It's beyond what you know. And I think that's the other thing. You don't know how great your life can be.
I love that. I mean, I think that I want to get back to Love is Kind Day, but really briefly in that is, we have to take some scary steps along the way to find out how amazing life really can be, right? And going through the healing process and the transformational journey is never something that is wasted time or energy. It is always worth it. We're always learning, we're always evolving and growing and bettering ourselves. And so I love what you just said, because I think it's so beautiful and it's so potent, that how would you have ever known 12 years ago tomorrow that you would be in a healthy, safe, amazing relationship, not to mention have rebuilt yourself in the way that you have, having this entrepreneurial journey, helping these women, having this incredible mission. I'm so inspired by you, Rosie. I'm so grateful to be having this conversation with you. So tomorrow, July 7th, 27th, is National Love is Kind Day. Tell us a little bit more about that, what that means to you, how people can participate, all of the amazing things.
Thank you. And I'm just going to step back one moment, for depends on who's hearing this, is that be very self-compassionate with yourself. This is the key to healing, is that self-compassion. And I go into a lot more detail when I work with my clients on it, no matter where they are. And I have to practice. It's a constant practice. So I wanted to, just give that little bit of a tip. So National Love is Kind Day. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing. Again, how did we end up creating this day? It was just, somebody mentioned something. I go, okay, and one thing led to the other. And then we're on the national calendar of holidays to be celebrated. It's just amazing. And why? Why? Because first of all, I told you the date was the date we landed. And so to me, Love is Kind Day is the day to celebrate your freedom from all your abusers, whatever the abuse is, however it's been defined, to help women recognize that they deserve to be treated with kindness. And it's such a core thing. People say be kind all the time, be kind to yourself. It's like, but what does it mean? And I go deep into that. It's all inner core work. National Love is Kind Day is really to tell others that you deserve to be treated with kindness, to share with the world that you do. That when we create kinder, intimate relationships, this is, I'm the disruptor. I don't think of myself as a victim, as a thriver or survivor or thriver. I don't align with any of those words, to be honest with you. It's just not who I am. It's like, I'm a freaking disruptor. I'm a freedom maker. I'm somebody. This is what National Love is Kind is. It's like to be able for you to show up 100% as you and live your life with that freedom. The freedom to love and be loved with kindness, because real love is kind. It's not terrorizing. It's not controlling. It's caring. It's not threatening. It's safe. That's the world. And when we do that, the world will change. This to me is the terrorism we need to address. This is it. This is at the root cause. There are between 0.9 and 2.0 billion women in the world who have experienced abuse. So 100 million women is a drop in the bucket. And
Wow.
That's why we need to spread this. And if you're in a healthy relationship, spread it. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, spread it. My dream is to have worldwide marches for what we want. I want kindness, abuse out, kindness in.
I love that. So how can people participate in National Love is Kind Day?
Well, we have a Facebook event day. We have a Facebook event, and you can go to that on Facebook. And we have because I just want women just to keep sharing it, and they can write to me. And I want to talk about, before we go, we were going to talk about the Love is Kind pledge, if I can.
Right. Yes, please. That was going to be my next question.
Do you mind if I read it? It's really short.
Yes,
okay.
Please.
So my daughter and I wrote this, and you can hear the power of it. And my guess is, like, a lot of women won't be there yet, and that's the work we need to do. So it goes like this, and they can get a copy of this. I'll tell them how. I am worthy. I deserve to be treated with kindness. I am lovable. I am enough. I have the right to live my life on my own terms. I deserve to be heard, and what I have to say is important. I have the right to my true and authentic self. I take good care of myself so that I can help others and show up more fully. I have the right to honor myself and my boundaries. I deserve to be surrounded by kind, loving, and supportive people. My life matters. I have the right to create a joyful, prosperous, and productive life.
Wow, mic drop. That is amazing. And honestly, like, I don't feel like that just needs one day, Rosie. Like, I think that women need to be saying this pledge to themselves every single day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Like, these are the words that we need to really have going in that inner dialogue on a regular basis, because this is how we shift into allowing more healthier relationships and really transcending the abuse that we've experienced in the past.
Yeah. And that's why of course, I agree with you 100%. And why they can get a copy, they can print it out, they can get their own personalized copy. It's a beautiful copy, and they can get that so that they can do that. And if there are ones where it's like, well, I don't really feel worthy, or I don't feel lovable, it's like, that's where I can help them. I can help them create that shift. So we can get into that, because if they feel that way, it's going to show up in other parts of their lives. Right? You're playing small in one area of your life. You're going to play small. You may think you are, but there's a whole part of you that's just holding back.
Right.
And it's just like, it just breaks my heart. Just breaks my heart when I see that.
I hear you. I just put the link to where you can find the Love is Kind pledge for anyone who's listening into the YouTube and the Divine Feminine Leaders Facebook page. So Divine Feminine Leaders on YouTube, Divine Feminine Leaders on Facebook. Maybe it's Celeste Hartwell on YouTube, actually. Just kidding. Celeste Hartwell on YouTube, Divine Feminine Leaders on Facebook. And it's bit.ly/ capital L, capital I, capital K, capital P, and then pledge, right? So pledge has a capital P. And in Bitly, capitalization is important. So bit.ly / capital LIKP for pledge. And the rest of the pledge is not capitalized. And so, Rosie, this has been such an inspiring conversation, such an affirming conversation for me and the work that I've done. And it's so beautiful to hear how amazing the transformation has been for you, for your clients. And I hope that everyone goes and downloads the pledge and celebrates National Love is Kind Day tomorrow, July 27th, or any day that you need some kindness for yourself. Like kindness definitely helps the world go round. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been an honor. It's been so much fun. Thank you, Celeste. This is fabulous.
All right. So we will see you on the next episode of Divine Feminine Leaders podcast. I'm going to play the outro now, and I want to let all of you know I wish you wealth. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been the Divine Feminine Leaders podcast with Celeste Hartwell. Thank you so much for joining us today. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and you have chosen to spend your time with us. That is not lost on us, and we are deeply appreciative. If you want to find us online, find all the links and the free giveaways that were mentioned in the show, please join us at celestehartwell.com. That is CELESTEHARTWELL. And you can link to this episode as well as any other episode there. If you enjoyed this episode and the content that we shared, I invite you to subscribe so that you get notifications every time a new episode is released. Or share it with a friend. If you know another female entrepreneur who could benefit from this information, we would love for you to share the love. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.